Hi, you're watching the Life of JEM live video podcast. This is episode 16. It's called Teenage Angst. This is my last show until summer. My podcast is moving to a live location in Upland, California with Raghouse Media at the Vintage Vault. I have my DJ here, my producer, April Duran. She's here virtually as this is being filmed live from my home in San Bernardino. Today, I have a special guest. I'm so excited. Isabel Quintero. She's a rock star writer who wrote one of my favorite YA novels, Gabby, A Girl in Pieces, by Cinco Puntos Press. This episode is called Teenage Angst, and we're going to talk about writing in teen voice, as well as hear about how Isabel got inspiration for her book, Gabby, A Girl in Pieces. First, I'm going to read a very short little paragraph from my memoir to set the scene. And this paragraph is from my memoir and is about my high school years. Here we go. It's tentatively titled Punk Rock High School Dropout. I am sitting in the bleachers with my mom, my dad, and my youngest sister, Annie. I am supposed to be graduating today with my twin sister and my best friend, but I threw it all away. This former straight-A student went from goody two-shoes to punk rock high school dropout. It only took months for me to ruin my life. My mom won't look at me. She says I broke her heart by dropping out. My mom taught me and my twin Jackie to read at the age of 3 by sitting at our small kitchen table and sounding out the words with us. My mom always said I was the smartest one. Dad puts his hand on my shoulder, but I push it away. I go hide underneath my high school's bleachers. The bleachers cover me in their shadow. Under the bleachers, it smells like piss. I light up and tears drip on my cigarette. I wipe at my thick Susie Sue lined eyeliner with my Sex Pistols tee. Music from the high school's marching band echoes in my ears. I stare down at my combat boots and tap my feet on the concrete and think to myself, I'm a fucking loser. My life is over. That's the excerpt. It doesn't end there. So everyone knows I had a great second act of my life. Now let me introduce my guest. I'm so excited. It is such an honor to have Isabel Quintero here today. Isabel Quintero is an award-winning writer and the daughter of Mexican immigrants. She lives and writes in the Inland Empire. Gabby, A Girl in Pieces, by Cinco Puntos Press, her first YA novel, was the recipient of multiple awards, including the Thomas Rivera Award, as well as the California Book Award Gold Medal. She is the author of 2 chapter books by Scholastic, Ugly Cat and Pablo, and Ugly Cat and Pablo and the Missing Brother. In 2016, Isabel was commissioned by the J. Paul Getty Museum to write a nonfiction YA graphic biography, Photographic, The Life of Graciela Iturbide, which went on to be awarded the Boston Globe Horn Book Award. Her more recent book, My Poppy Has a Motorcycle, isn't that cover beautiful? Earned the Southern California Independent Booksellers Association Award, as well as the Thomas Rivera Award and many other awards. Isabel's books have garnered many starred reviews and have been included in so many best of lists, including the New York Times Best Books list. Isabel has worked in education for the last 22 years. She's worked as a teacher's aide in a school for children with special needs, as an avid tutor, as an elementary school librarian tech, as a substitute teacher, as an instructor at community colleges, and even briefly as a high school English teacher. If Isabel wasn't writing, she'd be working in a school. She earned her BA in English with a concentration in literature and her MA in English composition from California State University, right here in San Bernardino. Being the daughter of Mexican immigrants has taught Isabel resiliency and perseverance. It has taught her that there are multiple ways of experiencing and living life in America. In Isabel's work, and these are her words, she aims to write characters and stories that reflect those varying realities that perhaps can hold up a mirror to the young children she writes to. Before the pandemic, Isabel was very active and helped facilitate creative writing workshops in the Inland Empire for youth. She also assisted in whatever literary arts organization and endeavor she could in the region. Isabel believes it is her responsibility to share and extend the platform and opportunities she's been given with others, especially marginalized voices. Isabel is also a mother, a partner, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and other non-literary related things. Welcome, Isabel Quintero. Yay!
Hello.
Hi.
Hi,
So
how are you
happy to
doing,
have
Monica?
you.
I'm so
I'm
happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. It's such an honor. So let's jump in. Let's talk about Gabby, a Girl in Pieces.
Sure.
I have my copy here that you signed for me way back when, before we were friends, and I was all fangirling all over you, and you wrote, "Juanita, keep on writing." So
Yeah, at the Wrightwood Festival.
yeah. And sometimes you meet your literary idols and they disappoint you, but you were so kind and encouraging to me. And I still vividly remember the first time I met you because of that, because you were so nice. So I was like, oh my gosh, she's so nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And the reason I love this book so much, and I've read it so many times, and I've given it as gifts to people, I've told people to read it, is that I totally identify with Gabby. Her voice is so real, so true. As a full figure gal myself, and a girl who loves spicy foods and ice cream, and as someone who couldn't pass Algebra 2, it took me 4 tries, and as a girl who wanted out of her one-horse town in the Inland Empire, I just want to know, how did you create this character? Like, where did her voice come from? Is she part you, part someone else?
Yeah, so it's like I said, I'm really happy to be on your show. I started writing her probably 2007, and it was a completely different book at the time. It was a novel in verse, and it was a different voice, and I was struggling to figure out, who she was going to be. And I think what I realized is that I was trying to write Gabby as she's part me. Like, she is,
Yeah.
short, fat, Chicana, light skinned Chicana, and that's me. And she is, what's it called? So I was having trouble with the novel in verse because I feel like maybe I wasn't being as honest or as true to myself in that version. I was holding a lot back. And so when I switch into diary format, when you're just in her head, there's a closeness that I was able to achieve that I wouldn't have been able to had it been, had I kept it a novel in verse. At least I feel, right. And so, and she is part me. But I do have to reiterate this whenever I'm asked this question, because that it's a work of fiction. It is not a memoir, because I get a lot of, is Gabby you? Is Gabby you? Yes and no. I was super shy around boys. Like, I was super boy crazy, but I didn't think that boys would like me. So I didn't talk to them, or when boys liked me, I just was, that person that would make jokes and, punch them in the arm. Like, I just was not very, I didn't have the confidence that I do now. And so, all of that was Gabby, and her being able to question her mom, and her being able to, at the end of the book, it's been out for a while now, so sorry, spoiler alert. But, she does end up going off to Berkeley, off to college. I didn't. I stayed here because my mom didn't want me to leave. My
Mm.
parents didn't want me to leave.
Wow.
And so I was scared to go
Yeah.
because I was, what was I going to go do? My mom was worried I was going to go out and have sex and, run wild, because I guess you could only have sex if you leave home, not if you live at home, right? So
Right.
she was very worried about that. And so
Well,
instead,
you know why that so touches me that I never knew that. I thought I knew Gabby wasn't you because of her life
yeah,
circumstances, obviously, but I too my journalism professor at Mount Sac wanted me to go to New York, and I chose to go to UC Riverside. I was scared too. I had
yeah,
never been out of the Inland Empire in my whole life, other than being a baby in Montana. And we moved here when I was 1 or 2, and yeah, I mean that's really, it's really important for people to realize, like, memoir is part fiction, and fiction is obviously always has a little piece of us in it, but
yeah,
it's not, you're not Gabby, but that voice somehow,
yeah,
I think maybe a little, the humor, how funny she is. I mean, laugh out loud funny. I was rereading it this week, and I was just kept, my husband's like, I had my headphones on reading it, and he's like, stop laughing. I don't even know what you're laughing about. And I would read him passages,
mhm,
and we'll talk about a couple of those. But as someone who herself crashed and burned her senior
mhm,
year of high school, I dropped out my senior year only 5 units short, and I was a straight A student junior year. So that's why I found Gabby so inspiring, because she shows how hard life is for teens, but I love that she perseveres and she wants out of this town and she gets out. So was that always your ending, that she would go off to Berkeley? Oh, I think Isabel froze for a second.
She froze,
She'll
yeah.
come back in a second. But April, you're there. So the thing that this Gabby book is so amazing, because Gabby just perseveres through all this tragedy and heartbreak. Her dad ends up dying in the book, and
Oh, wow.
it's really sad, but she somehow makes it through.
That is so cool. I can't wait. Oh, she'll be back in. She
She'll
just
be
left.
back in.
So, when was the book written?
Um, Published, she was talking about when she started writing it, but it was published in 2014.
Oh, yeah, because she said it was old, so spoiler alert, but it's not
Yeah.
that old. It's still new.
Yeah, to me, I feel like I just read it yesterday, because I've read it so many times, and like I said, I just reread it, and I think My Poppy Has a Motorcycle is very recent. This came out in 2020, I believe, or
hi,
2000.
yeah. So I'm back. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
yay!
like something happened, like I disappeared.
It's okay. We were talking about all your amazing work. So I was talking about whether the ending was always that Gabby would go off to Berkeley and make it out.
Yes. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was because, I met a lot of young women, and actually my chair when I worked in at Mount San Jacinto, we had a conversation about this, about not leaving home because you're afraid, right? And um, I was really not afraid of leaving. I wanted to leave, but I was afraid of my mom being mad at me, right?
Yeah.
I was afraid of my mom being disappointed and not talking to me. And she shared,
Yeah.
that her mom stopped talking to her for 6 months, and she went to UCR. I think she lived in Riverside, and she just went to live on campus. And that was, and so I was afraid of that. But as
Yeah.
I got older, I realized that we can't do that, right? I think a lot of times, um, as Latinas, especially as Latinas, we're made to stay home, and we're made to feel that we need to be home. My mom didn't want me to leave until I got married, right? Like, we
Wow.
have conversations about this now as I'm an adult, right? And
Yeah.
she's changed her mind, and she's learned, and she's grown things, and grown. But I think we are we're raised to, at least in my generation, right, and previous generations, to take care of our family. And that means our parents, our brothers, our sisters, and before ourselves, right? Everyone is before us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so um, they want us, we want, our parents want us to go to school, but not far away, just like
Yeah.
around here, right? Like,
Yeah, don't go too far. Lord
don't go
forbid
too
you go
far.
to San Francisco, right?
Yeah. And so I think that
Yeah.
one of the things that is wonderful about our culture is that we are um, so family oriented. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's also can be stifling to us
Yeah.
because we become traitors or disloyal, or we were seen as turning our back on our family when we want to move away or we want to do something different than what the family approves of. And so I wanted that ending because I wanted her to be able to break that cycle,
Yeah.
right? To be able to make decisions for herself that she knew would be good for her. At least she wanted to try, right? She wanted
Yeah.
to go out and explore the world a little bit.
Yeah, I had a dream in high school of going to Claremont McKenna, and we didn't have any money or anything. And I didn't know about student loans as a high school student. I didn't know that was possible. So I kind
Well,
of
good
just
thing you
gave up.
didn't.
I know, right? I'm
Yeah,
actually glad I went to Mount SAC and then got a scholarship at UC Riverside
yeah,
because I had plenty of money for law school at USC,
yeah.
which I took debt out for. But Gabby goes through so much her senior year of high school, which I think is very realistic, especially now. It reading it now, it hit home even more because of the pandemic and all of the stuff that high school students are going through right now.
Mhm.
But Gabby has a host of tragedies happen in her life, both to her friends and to her personally. Yet she perseveres. Why is Gabby so resilient? Is it because she's Latina? Because we are resilient, we know. Or is it something in her character that just makes her have this not only a knowledge of who she is, but just this ambition?
I think it's survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what my therapist would call it, right?
Yeah.
Because she does have these things happen, and that's been a critique I've gotten before. So many things happen in her senior year. It seems unrealistic that this would happen to a teenager, and I'm like, depends what teenager you talk to, right? Depends
Mm-hmm.
who you are actually seeing or you consider a teenage, right? Like a lot of this stuff is it happened during my time in school, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, I am the daughter of an addict, but my dad thankfully did not pass away, but I know
Yeah.
that happens, right? Like
Yeah.
that was one of my biggest, and that's why I wrote that in the book, because that was one of my biggest fears, like my dad overdosing. Like it
Yeah.
was just such a huge fear for me. And I wanted to write that out into the world. Um, and it
Yeah.
was a very hard scene to write. But yeah,
Because
no.
in the book, Gabby finds him, and
And yeah,
yeah, it's so heartbreaking. But to the too many things happening comment,
yeah,
people have told you that's bullshit because like so many of these things have happened to kids in
yeah,
high school. And I remember a teacher telling me my writing was melodramatic. I'm like, well, my life is dramatic. Like,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, and it is. And I think, um, I I look back at when I used to teach high school, right? It's a very
Mhm,
short period. I taught for a little over a year. But my students, and even when I was an elementary school librarian, you have
mhm.
students who, are all disheveled one day because, oh, I was up late at night because my mom was getting arrested, or they're, during the 2008, recession, a lot of students became homeless. And so you have
Yeah,
a lot of things happening to young people that adults fail to recognize in young
mhm,
people. For some reason, adults often think that problems, that heartbreak, that loss, that
yeah,
grief um, begin when you're like over 18,
right.
right? Like from 0 to 18, your life is like super happy. And then after that, like, oh my gosh, real life happens. That's one of my pet peeves when I hear teachers or people and tell people when young people when they're in school, when you get out into the real world. No, we live in the real world. The school
Yeah,
exists in the real world. My life exists in the real world. There is no when you get out into the real world. If this
yeah.
isn't the real world, what is this? This is like a fake world, like fantasy, because it's not.
And I loved how it's really written in a blue collar language about a blue collar family. My family lost everything my junior and senior year of high school. we were kind of moving from house rental to rental because my dad lost his bar, then we lost our house. And I don't think people acknowledge that the impact of this on kids, and your book captures that, how much family and the personal affect one's academic
Yeah.
trajectory,
Yeah. Like I didn't, I graduated with honors from high school. Not high honors, but like regular honors, right? Because I did enough, right? Like I did enough to do that. I wasn't the best student. I took, the part in Gabby where she talks about doing algebra 2, like her second, like I failed algebra 2 my junior year, so I had to retake it. And I had the same math
Me
teacher
too.
all 4 years in high school, right? I like did enough so I could do that, right? And I was one of those kids that like learning in school came easy. Like school was made for someone like me, right?
Yep.
At school, the way our institutions of learning are set up is not for everybody, right? But I
Right.
needed that structure because I came from dysfunction. So school was something I could get into, right?
Yeah.
But I just lost my train of thought of where I was going with this. But anyway, like,
Yeah. No,
but
you're right.
the dysfunction, it bleeds into it. Like whatever your home
Yeah.
life is, for a lot of young people, it could be an escape. For a lot of young people, could be a burden, something extra that's
Yeah.
put on them. I had students when I taught high school who they had to help at home, like pay,
Yeah.
like financially. And so school was not a priority. Helping financially was a priority because if they didn't help, they would not have a place to live,
Yeah.
right? Or
Survival,
they
right?
survival, and it is all
Yeah.
about survival. And I think until adults recognize this and give young people the respect that they deserve, like we're going to continue having all of these. We're going to have a lot of issues, right?
Yeah.
That adults complain about with young people, right?
Yeah.
Like we're going to continue to have things like that. I think there needs to be more respect paid to young people,
100%. And dovetailing from that, Gabby, A Girl in Pieces, really shows how poetry and writing and reading can be a haven for especially a teenage creative. Gabby finds so much solace in writing and reading her poetry. Why did you always plan on making Gabby a poet? I know it started out as a book in verse. So was that always part of Gabby's character?
Um, Yes, it's always because poetry was such an important part for me, right? So that part is
Yeah.
pretty autobiographical, right? I did fall in love with poetry in 10th grade. I remember
Mm.
Miss Agard. Um, she had us memorize Anyone Lived in a Pretty How Town. I can't recite it now, but because it's been like 21 years, but all I remember is Anyone Lived in a Pretty How Town was up so many floating bells down, right? And I was just like,
Ugh.
wait a minute, what is this? And then I read more E.E. Cummings and I was like, wait, you don't have to use a period, or you can put a period like by itself, like it could be lower. Like, what is this like thing that I've been missing in my life? And so I started writing poetry, very angsty teenage poetry. And that was like my first love.
Yeah.
And so I wanted Gabby to have that, for us to share that,
Yeah, and I love the scenes where she does a reading, and it's so true and real, right? Because that's
Mhm.
how you do get involved in it. You go to a coffee shop, you do the open mic thing. I'm not a poet. I write some poetry, and I'm very insecure about my poetry because I
Mhm.
don't know line breaks. And I love that the book talks about how Gabby learns these things and
Yeah.
in high school. And the book also shows how important good English teachers are, and how important prose writers are, like Sandra Cisneros, and poets like Sylvia Plath. Um,
Mhm.
how important were your teachers and your writers to you? I think you've already said, but it sounds like it was
Yeah,
everything.
no, incredibly important. Like they
Mhm.
were very important, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you by name the teacher that made a
Yeah.
difference. And, Miss Lang in 5th grade, Miss Siddons in 8th grade, Miss Agard, Miss Sonnenberg. And, obviously at the university level, I have, um, Julie Pagel, Dr. Julie Pagel, Ellen
Wow.
Gomez, Jackie Rhodes, like that encouraged me in different ways,
Mhm.
and who opened my eyes. For example, Dr. Gomez at Cal State San Bernardino, she, like, I didn't know there was like Chicanx writers,
Yeah.
right? Like I didn't, like I think I had read maybe Reign of Gold in high school. And that was, I think, because I just recently remembered when I read it for the first time. Reign of Gold by Victor Villaseñor. If you haven't read it, it's a
Mhm.
beautiful book. It also takes place a lot in Corona and the IE area. But Mr. Perez, our librarian, because I was a lonely kid sometimes in high school, and I spent a lot of time in the library. I had friends, but that's a whole nother tangent. I had friends, but I spent a lot of time in the library.
Yeah.
And so he'd like recommend books for me, and that was one of the books he recommended. But besides that, I didn't realize that we wrote books
Yeah. Me
until I
neither.
read Michelle Seros's Chicana House,
Oh,
right? Until I
exactly.
read, and I was like, holy shit, like what? Like we can use Spanglish. I can talk about chicharrones. I can
Yeah.
right? Like I can talk about like my culture and my life, and it's worthy of a poem. It's worthy of a book. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be, I don't know, insert whatever white poet we learned about in
Yeah.
school. It doesn't have to be that. It could be this, you know. So that was eye opening, and so teachers have been very um, instrumental in my life.
I love that you can name them because I can too. Holly Cannon at Mount Sac, Tiffany Lopez at UC Riverside. These people that open up worlds for us, right?
Mhm.
And show it. I remember Holly Cannon writing on a paper, "Oh, I love the way you write." And it meant everything to me as a junior college student who was working 2 jobs and taking the bus or begging for rides to school
Mhm.
and waitressing and all the bullshit I had to deal with. It took me
Yeah,
5 or 6 years to get through Mount Sac. I mean, it was like an eternity to me. And then
yeah,
I got through UC Riverside in 2 years. And I was like, why was that so hard? But it's
yeah,
because, you know, it goes back to economics,
yeah.
when you're juggling all of this.
Oh, definitely. And to that point, when I was in the credential program at Cal State San Bernardino, um, I remember one of the professors there saying and reiterating, saying this multiple times: whatever you do or don't do in the classroom affects your students, right?
Wow.
Whatever you do or you don't do affects your students. And
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true, right? You can tear down a first grader, and now that child for the rest of their life hates school.
Mm.
Or you can build them up, and now you've instilled a sense of curiosity in them, right? And I've experienced both kinds of teachers, in my for
Yeah.
myself, and then working with teachers, because I love teachers, but boy, are there some shitty teachers as well that don't need to be in the classroom, right?
Yep.
So there's both, right? And
Yeah.
it's important that we know that.
Yeah, and I want to shout out Henaveva, my friend from Molokai High School, from Molokai Middle School, that's watching with her class, and my twin sister Jackie, who was an administrator and is going back to the classroom next year at Rancho Mirage High School. So,
Mm,
yay to teachers, and thank you, Isabel, for all your
yeah.
service in teaching. So I love the way your book is so body positive. Before it was even a word, Gabby was body positive, and how she accepts herself and her appetite and loves to eat. There's this scene with Martin where he asks her to study, and she tells him, "I have some really good beef jerky we can share." And I swear, I read that page over and over because I just crack up every time because she's like kind of weird, right? And later he tells her, yeah, it was kind of weird, but the beef jerky was really good. I mean, how did you weave all these foods in? See's candy, the marshmallows, this what are they called?
Scotch mallows.
Yes.
Very delicious, yes.
The tacos, the Rite Aid ice cream. This is a very Inland Empire book. And I know you give a town name, but I don't know if that's really where it's taking place or not. Is that a fictional town?
It's fictional. It's fictional. And I think that's maybe one regret I had. Because I think I was kind of nervous of giving it the real city, right? Because then it'd be really close, and then it'd be a lot of like, oh, this is you, right? And I wanted to have that separation, but it's still the IE. And what cracks me up is that people, I don't think I wrote anywhere in that book that it's from Inland Empire, and people know it's the Inland Empire.
You never say it. I have read your book many times and I've looked for that. And I'm glad you don't, because it's almost more universal just saying Southern California, right?
Yeah. But it makes me happy that people recognize where we're at, right, in the book. And
Pepe's House of Wings, only that would exist, only in the IE.
I think I didn't realize, to be honest, like how much food was in there until I started getting readers, until the book was published and I started getting readers send me DMs or emails telling me how hungry my book was making them. I think someone, when I just got on Twitter, sent me a GIF of like beef jerky dancing or something. And I was like, did I really write that much food? And I had, right. And I think, she is fat positive. I don't know if she'd use that word. I don't know if she'd use those terms, because I think it's talking about our bodies is such a, it's so loaded a lot of times, right? To be body positive or fat positive, right? Because sometimes you get scared. I feel like, I try to be fat positive, but I had things happen in my life. I went through in 2018, I had a very traumatic thing happen, and I didn't feel like my body was mine anymore, right? Like I had been very happy and like, okay, like I'm a happy fat girl. Like this is who I am. Like, I don't give a shit. You don't like how I look, then look the other way. And then I had this thing happen, and I threw all of that like out. Like it was just hard to get back to, and it's still hard to get back to it, right? I'm in an anthology called The Other F Word, which if you haven't, I'm like do like shameless plug here. Like The Other F Word. It's a celebration of the fat and fierce, right? And I had agreed to do this anthology, and then I was super excited. And right before like my piece was due, this thing happened, right? Like this thing happened, and I was like, I don't want to write this anymore, And I talked to some of my friends, and one of my friends, my friend Allison Giffredo, was like, you could write, just be honest in what you write in the essay you write, that you are not, it's not always 100%. You're not always happy in the skin you're in, whether you be fat or not. Right. Like, but there are some days that are great. And then some days that you're like, oh, my pants don't fit. Right. But that's life.
That's every day for me right now.
Right. Like that's like life. And it's continual. And I hate that it's something that we have to fight for, to like love our bodies. But sometimes it is a little bit more of a struggle than it is on other days. Right. Like I became a mom last year, and
congratulations.
Thank you. Yay. And I've not lost any of the weight from my pregnancy. Right. I've been home. I haven't been able to work out, and go hiking, because that helps with my mental health, not only like, like to lose weight, but like my mental health. Right. And so it's been a struggle, but the other day, like a couple of weeks ago, like my son, he was like really comfortable on my bansa and like playing with me. And I was like, my son loves my bansa. Why do I have such a struggle with it right now?
Yeah.
It makes him happy and he feels comfortable with mama and he likes that, so why am I having such a struggle with it? And so slowly, but I wanted Gabby, because I had body issues as a young girl.
So did
And
I. Yeah.
and my mom was very, like, I love my mom dearly, but she give me licuados, like shakes, and always like, this is a good way to lose weight,
Slim
and
fast.
you need to lose weight, and here, wear these underwear that will like cut into your skin and make you super, suck everything in, like all of these things, because her fear was that I'd be fat. And for her, she always said, it's because of your health. It's because of your health. But it didn't matter. I was like 14, 13, 9, worried about being fat,
Yeah. I've been every size. I was thin growing up. In high school, I gained weight. And I remember I was dealing with eating disorders, bulimia, and stuff like that. And then now at 50, I don't care anymore whether I'm a 14 or a 16. I can't get below that. It's just, my body is not meant to be thin. I've realized that. I'm meant to be a 14 to 16, and I'm comfortable at that weight, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to fit anyone's expectation of what I should look like. I like how I look. I work on my skin, and I don't work out. I don't enjoy it, and I have bad feet. So why am I going to ruin my feet running? It's, to me, but I love that you love to hike and all that stuff. But the thing about your child and your body and feeling like, our bodies are vessels, right? And and it's just so touching, and you're so open about it. And I think it's important that young girls realize that beauty can be bigger, and Hollywood's getting the memo. If you look at these game shows, there's bigger hosts, and they're fucking gorgeous, these women. And I'm like, why has thin always been in? Why isn't voluptuous, like being a big girl, in? Because I think big girls are prettier. I'm sorry. It's face or fanny after 50. And I'd rather have my face than a small fanny.
Yeah. I think that we are so obsessed with beauty, with how someone looks.
Yeah.
That we can't see past that in a way that's like our obsession to be beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just wrote a piece for the Allen Review. Well, I just participated in an interview, for a conversation for the Allen Review, where I talk about like the danger of body positivity, in that I feel like that sometimes it's like just pushing beauty, like, okay, here is a way that women should be looking. It's mostly women. It's mostly women.
Yeah.
So, or femmes, right? Here's a way to look at people. But if you don't look the specific way, even if you're fat, then you're not worth looking at, or you're not worth respecting. Right.
Yeah.
And so
put your makeup on, get your hair done. Like, I like to post no makeup pics, or punk rock, like t-shirt, no makeup pic, because fuck that. I don't have to wear makeup to feel pretty necessarily. Right.
Yeah. And some days we don't feel pretty, and it's okay if we don't want to be an object of desire or someone to look at. Right. And so, and that's fine too. Like, you be yourself. And I think that's the important part, like being comfortable with who we are, which is, like I mentioned before, like, we're incredibly difficult. But I think the important part is respecting people, right? Because a lot of us, we don't get, like, we just have a body. Like, we don't, like, it was crazy to me. It's like, we don't get to choose. Like, well, I mean, we can pay to have our body done different ways, right? But we don't get to choose how we're born, right? Like, I don't get to choose like the color of my skin. I don't get to choose like my height. I don't get to choose different parts of me. I don't get to choose that my arms are crooked or that I have crooked fingers. Like me and my brother have like crooked pinkies. Like I don't get to like it happened, and there you go. And so it's just crazy, or ridiculous. I should say crazy. It's ridiculous that we put so much emphasis on how much we respect people by how much they look, right? Or how much we
Right.
find people worthy only depending on if you look this way, you're worth more than someone who doesn't look this way, right?
Right. And being writers, our beauty is really in the written word on the page. So why do we have to have a picture anyways? Why can't you just judge me by my written words, right?
Yeah, I mean, um I think maybe, I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think we like I see a lot of people that I post selfies all the time. I post love stuff more. I post more back of my kid's head now. But I think of writers who do post a lot of selfies, and I think there's also power in that, right?
Yeah.
There's also
Yeah.
power. Like, I think that wherever we find power, we should hold on to it, but we shouldn't let others dictate what power we should have or not have, or what power we need to have in order to be worthy in this world, right? Or in order to be listened to, in order to be respected, in order to be taken seriously. I remember at Cal State San Bernardino, there was a professor, and she was traditionally beautiful, right? She had blonde hair, skinny, thin, traditionally beautiful. And I remember she had a lot of trouble being taken seriously. And she was like this like badass Virginia Woolf scholar, and having issues with being taken seriously because she looked that way. So I think it's just like any way you look, people are going to find some way to put a hole in it, and to say, I'm not going to respect you because you're too pretty. I'm not going to respect you because you're too fat. I'm not going to respect you because you're too brown. I'm not going to respect you because you're too short. And we should just like, fuck it. Like, you respect everyone regardless. If a person weighs 100 pounds, 500 pounds, that shouldn't be your marker for like how much I should respect that person, because they both deserve the equal amount of respect,
100%. And I think part of the important thing is just having these discussions as women of color and, people that don't maybe fit the stereotype of, what people think is beautiful, and I mean, I just think Gabby is so beautiful and in the book, and it's because she loves herself. It's not because that I know what she looks like necessarily.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's actually a picture of Gabby in my head so much as her personality, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
So,
yeah.
do you want to read a portion of anything?
From Gabby?
From whatever you want. You can read anything.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about body positivity, and this is right on top. Let me see what picture I have here. See where I'm at in this book.
Is that the other F word?
Anthology.
Awesome.
Yeah, the other F word. Yeah.
Where can people find that, just in case anyone wants to buy it?
Online, support your local indie bookstore.
Okay, great.
And you can find it there. You can find it probably Barnes and Noble, like anywhere. I recommend you don't buy it from Satan. I know they deliver quickly, but support other folks if you can. But I'll read.
I'm just going to read some of the comments. Liz Gonzalez is watching. She loves your earrings.
Thanks, Liz.
My twin Jack is watching. I know that Lucy is on here. And she's watching. Got a lot of IE people. Victoria Waddle loves Scotch mallows. And my twin corrected me. She's going to be teaching at Desert Hot Springs High.
Oh, okay. Down in the lower
Juanita,
desert, right?
Juanita, I have to say, Jason Vilches, he's amazing. He's a substitute teacher here in the Inland Empire. He has a young daughter. He's also a singer-songwriter who wrote a beautiful song about his young daughter. And he said, this book sounds amazing. I want to buy this book for my daughter. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Aww. Yes, buy Gabby, A Girl in Pieces. Buy it at your local bookstore. The one in Riverside is Cellar Door Books. So support your local bookstore, like Isabel said.
Yes, please. Yes, Cellar Door Books. If you're in the IE, Cellar Door Books would be great. Linda there is wonderful and super supportive of the community. So yeah. Let me see.
And
Okay.
you can also buy Gabby, I think, on Cinco Puntos Press on their website, and they have so many great books. I've talked to the editor there, and she's amazing.
Yeah, Lee is really wonderful. Okay, so I'll just read the beginning of this. So there's some poems in between, and I'll use it as a break. So it starts off with a poem, and the essay in here is called Fat and Thriving. See, your body never stops changing, ever. It is a magnificent thing in all its rolls and all its jiggles. It is a beautiful thing. Sometimes, though, my body feels like a chore, like it does not belong to me. My limbs, my panza, just waits to keep myself tethered to the ground. Sometimes it's like other hands hold my body up or down, hands that do not belong to me, touching and molding what isn't theirs, usurping the shape of my skin. The first time I realized I was fat was in 4th grade. My mom told me I looked like a pregnant woman. I went to school the next day and asked friends if I looked pregnant to them. I remember that as the moment my weight shifted in my brain into something important. I don't hold it against my mom, at least not now, though I used to. I really did. What I've come to learn now is that parents are simply people who are trying their best and therefore will mess up often. I've learned that my mom is a cis woman like me, and as such, she was teaching me how to survive as a woman when much of the value we have is put into how we look, especially in terms of finding a mate, something that's always stressed for me. Now, my mom, like most folks who love us do, framed the push to lose weight as being healthy. It was always about health, 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 health. And to be honest, I believed her because she's my mom and worried about me. Remember, she was teaching me how to survive. And because of her upbringing, my mother is a hell of a survivor. To her, being healthy and beautiful was part of how you survived as a cis woman. If you've read my first book, Gabby, A Girl in Pieces, you may remember the section where Gabby makes a list of questions she wants to ask her mom, but is too afraid to ask. Perhaps you have a list of similar questions anxious to be asked, but know that it's not going to happen because opening your mouth and letting them out may come with consequences or shame. Gabby's list of questions is also a list of questions that as a teen I wanted to ask my mom. I was raised to be independent, but to need a man, to want to have a man, not a woman, a man, because men are strong. They can do things we can't because women are not enough on their own. My mom's friends warned that my growing waistline, my lack of lipstick would scare my husband into the arms of some thin thing who knew how to use her mouth to say sweet things that slipped out tinted red or pink. I was never asked if I even liked sugar. I'll leave it there.
Oh, amazing.
So
everyone needs to get that book. The Other F Word.
Yeah, and they have, this anthology is great because it has so many wonderful authors, right? Alex Gino, Renee Watson, David Bowles, Virgie Tovar, Julie Murphy, Miguel Morales, Lana Spencer, Amy Spalding, so many wonderful authors and people, and it's diverse in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was amazing. Thank you for reading that. I also
Oh,
want to
thank
talk
you.
about this, which is My Puppy Has a Motorcycle, which came out, I believe, last year. And it's written for a younger demographic. And I love how Inland Empire focused it is. How was it hard for you to write to that younger demographic?
That's another question I get asked a lot, and it came out in 2019, and
Okay.
I just like writing stories.
Mm-hmm.
So yes and no.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, okay, like I approach it like I would any other story, right? What does the story need to be understood, right? What do I need to do so the audience understands it? And obviously thinking about audience, like what age group. And so, yeah, but also, that book I started in 2010, I think 2010, because yeah, it's a memory of my dad. And what I like to point out is that dad in that book is the same dad in Gabby, right? Same dad. Um,
Wow.
and
Wow.
it just, people are complicated, right? People are
Yeah.
complicated. And if you're from the IE, this book is my love letter to Corona, one of the cities I grew up in. And so if you
It
open it
really
up
is.
to the front, there's a map of Corona right on the inside of it, right? You've got the Cleveland National Forest in the background. You've got Grand Boulevard, the citrus groves. It's my love letter to my home.
It really is. And I love the last page says, but I know here in our little house, there are things that will always stay the same. And you're the master of the ending, because Gabby's ending, which is my favorite ending of a book that I've ever read, is if anyone has trouble understanding that, well, they can kiss my ass. I mean, you just, it's amazing, because I mean, everyone struggles with how to begin a book, but I think how to end a book is even more important, right? How do you end
Yeah.
this story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you end? And I mean, I've been writing my memoir for 15 years at this point, so I don't know how to begin or end at this point. I'm in the weeds, but I love your work because it's just so, it's snapshots in a way, whether it's fiction or children's books or all the stuff you write. It's just you have this really beautiful way of portraying the world, and that is to me what voice is really about, how someone sees the world, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Ending, Gabby went through several endings. So
Mm.
it was, I think when we get out of our way, um, we get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes we have very highfalutin ideas about our work, about what it means to be a writer. And what I find is the more honest you are about yourself, about your work, the not easier, because writing is not easy, but
No.
the more you're able to find an ending, the more you're able to find a beginning, or to find
Mm.
that voice, right? To really find that voice. Yeah. But writing is a
Well,
lot of throat clearing. So
what'd you say? Writing was a lot of what?
it's a lot of throat clearing, right?
Mm.
So I think that happens to a lot of us, especially when we write long prose. I have the young adult book that I just sold. The whole beginning, I'm now like, I don't need this.
Is that To Catch a
I
Witch? YA the
no, that's so I'm very fortunate that this year within the last year I've sold 4 books, right? So I sold a trilogy, and that's a paranormal, Martinez Paranormal Services, and that's a middle grade trilogy, about a young girl, Penelope Martinez, who is the daughter of ghost hunters. And she wants to be a ghost hunter, but her parents are like, you're too young, because she's 12. And you have to wait till you're 16. But she wants, like any young person, she wants to prove them wrong. I'm ready for this. And so she and her friends go out looking for a ghost. and they find way more than a ghost. And
Wow.
it takes place in Riverside,
Oh
um,
my
at a
gosh, I'm
place.
so excited.
So the main place is called Kingdom Park, where a lot of this takes place. And you know, it's the series is a lot about, because as I grow older, I think a lot. I've always been interested in family history and what our elders can teach us, and but it's a lot of the folk tales, the stories that I grew up with as a young person. You know, stories about Satan being making himself look like a woman, or shapeshifters, or remedios and brujeria and curanderismo, like all these things that I grew up with that were very much a part of my life, and in ways like are still part of my life in different ways, right?
Wow.
um, and so these books are about that, but this YA novel is about a young girl. It's called Golden State. That's the title right now. And it's about a young woman, and not young girl, young woman. She's just graduated from high school, and she doesn't know what she wants to be in life or wants to do. And she doesn't like school. And she's taking a class at RCC just to please her parents, so they'd get off her back and stop harassing her. Um, and then she finds out that her dad has another family. Has had another family this whole time in Northern California, and she has a brother who's a year older than her, and she wants to meet him. And so she's like, "Fuck this summer school class." She takes off with her best friend Memo, who's just gotten out of jail, and they take this road trip together through California to meet her brother. And of course, it's more than just about meeting her brother, this road trip. But yeah.
I can't wait to read these books. I want to have you back on. We have so much more to talk about. When one of those books comes out, I'd love to have you back on. I mean, you're so creative, and you can just see how you create these characters and stories, and you're so like just mesmerizing when you talk about it. So we're going to do a quick giveaway really quick, Isabel. I want someone to put in the comments, name the author who died recently, who wrote the Ramona Quimbley books. Hint, hint, hint. This woman once lived in Ontario, California in the Inland Empire, and she volunteered at the library in Ontario. So if someone wants to put her name in the comments, I think she was in her 90s when she died, or maybe 100. She died recently.
104.
104! Oh,
Yeah.
Jackie.
And fun fact, Daisy Ramona, the main character of My Puppy Has a Motorcycle, was named after Ramona Quimby. Because when I was a little girl, I wanted to be Ramona, as like I loved the Ramona books. And I went through a period where my mom called me Ramona because that's what I would answer to.
Blowing bubbles. She used to always blow bubbles with straws, I remember. And, her big sister, she'd drive her
Jesus,
crazy.
yeah.
Beezus and Ramona. So Beverly clearly was the answer. Jackie, you're not allowed to win, so it's going to be Lucy. Lucy, message me your address, and I'll mail you a Life of Gem tea. And Victoria, if you message me too, I'll send you one too. Lucy and Victoria. Jackie already has one. Thank you, Isabel, for being on.
Thank you.
You are such an open person and so just fascinating. I love you. I love your work. I hope everyone finds your books and buy every book she's ever written, because she's going to be a rock. She's already a rock star, but she's going to be on the literary landscape for decades. So can you tell them where else to find any of your books? I know you said
Thank
local.
you. Yeah, so definitely Cellar Door is super supportive of my work, so I know that they have all my books there. You can find them at Barnes & Noble, or if you look on indiebound.org, if you can find different bookstores there. So you can find them anywhere books are sold.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for listening. I'll be back in June. We have an upcoming roster of amazing writers and thinkers. Thank you, Isabel Quintero. Thank you, DJ producer April and Raghouse Media. We'll be moving to Upland Vintage Vault, IE. Go to my website, juanitaemance.com, if you want to see archive videos. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.